government is wrong about residential schools and 60 Scoop. People want to help in the future. As a Canadian, I feel guilty of the things that had happened. I hope it doesn't happen again. We are all treaty people.
I think we made big mistakes about the First Nations. Because of the residential schools, many children died and other First Nations were sent to poor land.
We as treaty people, we can make the future better than the past by being partners with the First Nations. I feel sad because kids went to residential schools.
But since the government shut them down, I'm happy as a treaty person.
But if the government makes kids go to residential schools again,
I'm going to go to them and say no
more residential schools. As treaty people, we feel bad because First Nation people weren't treated fairly. The Indian Act, residential schools, and the 60 Scoop weren't fair. If this happens again, we're gonna tell the government that this has to stop.
As a treaty person, I feel kind of guilty because all of the children that died in residential schools, over 1,000 did die. But after about 100 years of residential schools, they finally decided to close them down. And there was an apology for it too. But we're lucky that we don't live in the past. We're lucky we live in the present. The present is a gift. I hope the government never decides to make residential schools again. If he does decide to, we would just say no more residential schools.
As a treaty person, I feel bad of the kids in the 1900s that had to go to residential schools. I don't think that it was a good idea to ban the powwows. As a treaty person, I don't think that it's very fair.
As treaty people, we think it's wrong that powwows and First Nations cultures became illegal.
As a treaty person, I feel very bad that the powwow was canceled and the kids have to go to residential school. If it starts again, I'm going up to Stephen Harper and say no.
Stephen Harper gave an apology, but there were still bad things happening. Before and after that apology, reserves were still not getting enough money.
As Canadians, we feel ashamed that our government did awful things to the Aboriginals, but we think we can learn from our mistakes.
I think being a treaty person feels good sometimes, bad other times. The Indian Act was bad, but we learned from our mistakes. Residential schools was awful, but they were closed, and Stephen Harper also made an apology. We have to forgive because we are all treaty people.